Hey family, happy Monday, you guys. Happy Monday. I am still in Alabama, as you guys can see. I did get to go home last week, well, the week before last. I left Saturday evening, got home Saturday night, and then I immediately came back Sunday morning. So still here, still rocking and rolling, but I figured this would provide me an opportunity to sit down and do some more talks. I thought that I would chat with you guys about why I am no longer religious or Christian. I sort of touched on this in a previous video I did. I think it was being black, non-religious while homeschooling, and I will leave that video linked for you guys if you want to go check it out. I touched on it in that video, and I thought, you know what, I'll do a whole video and sit and chat with you guys about my journey through religion and particularly Christianity, and why I no longer consider myself a Christian or religious, and just chat with you guys. Maybe, you know, this will help somebody that maybe is in this same process of life of trying to navigate and figure out where they are. Or maybe even those of you who are Christian or who are religious, maybe this will help you when you come in contact with somebody that's in a transitional period or in a questioning phase, or who don't consider themselves Christian or who are not religious. Maybe this will help you be able to understand them and be soft and be kind and understanding, and maybe just be kind in general. Yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this topic, y'all. I don't know where I'm gonna begin. Like, these chats literally just be me sitting down and chatting with you guys. No script here. I kind of want to start from the beginning, I guess, because I think it's important to understand my journey and where I started and how I got to where I am. A little background story: my grandparents were Jehovah's Witness. Well, my grandfather, he was Jehovah's Witness, and not in the traditional sense, because he absolutely loved holidays. They celebrated holidays. My grandmother didn't, you know, always have on a dress and all of that. So they didn't have that part of the Jehovah's Witness beliefs, but they had some of the other beliefs, or more so my granddad's. That's what my mom grew up in. She grew up in the Jehovah's Witness realm. My grandmother and granddad ended up getting divorced, and when they got divorced, my grandmother just all together. When I used to talk to her about her story and her journey, her thoughts was that the parts of Jehovah's Witness that were practiced were toxic for her. She was in an abusive marriage, and to be married to a person that was upholding this religious belief and yet was abusive and not faithful, and his family backed him up in that, and they were all Jehovah's Witness. She just felt like that was a toxic environment, and so she left church and religion altogether. Later in her life, she did return to the church, but for a long period of time, she did not practice any type of religion. So that kind of gives you the background from my mom. So for me and my mom had this flow of energy. She really would follow whatever interests her. If this interests her, she would dive into that. If that interests her, she would dive into that. My mother was a reader. She read a lot. And if she found interest in something, again, she would just follow that. And she took me along. I remember us trying and going to all these different types of churches and different types of things, and her talking about all these different religions and just thought processes. I probably was around 13 when my mom settled on non-denominational and found a church that she fell in love with. And so at that point, we started attending church pretty regularly. I would say maybe 2 to 3 Sundays out the month. That is when church became really introduced to me on a consistent basis. And it's funny because at that same time in my life, I met my biological father, who is very much so Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, the Quran. So total opposite of where my mom was at that point in her life. We went to that church for a pretty long time. Most of you know I was a teenage mother. I had my child at 15. We still attended that church. They were very loving, very accepting. I remember the pastor's son saying that we're gonna be married. All the time. He used to be like, you know you're my wife, right? If you guys are familiar with non-denominational, but basically non-denominational churches are basically like, we don't practice any denomination. So we're not Baptist, we're not Pentecostal, we're not Catholic. We're just, and this church, I feel, was the epitome of that. The pastor was on the younger side, not younger, but on the younger side. He wasn't just your typical older kind of pastor. The music was taking secular songs and making them church songs. And the message was usually prosperity message or that faith-based message. That was the church that I attended all through middle school and high school. Now, at the same time that I was attending this church, I was going to spend summers with my dad, who again was very Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam. And I remember when I would go visit him, we would have these back and forth conversations about religion and church and Jesus versus Allah and the Quran versus the Bible and just all these different back and forth conversations. And when I got to college, I remember searching for a church, and I remember looking for a church that was very similar to my church at home. And I met a friend, and he was like, oh, you should try my church. It's non-denominational. It's great. It's come as you are, whatever. And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to try it. And I went, and I fell in love with the church. I fell in love with the church. I fell in love with the pastor. I fell in love with the people. And I want you guys to hear what I'm saying. I fell in love with these things, right? And so it was at that time that I started attending church heavily. I was in church every Sunday. I went to Bible study every Wednesday. I would take notes in my Bible. Like, I was in it. I was what I would consider a die-hard Christian at that point. Like, I'm gonna save lives, and I'm gonna go out and preach the gospel, and you need to know Jesus. I remember, you guys, because my mom, she struggled with drug addiction throughout her life. And I remember going home from college and like praying and laying hands on the walls of my house and things like that, you know, calling the Holy Ghost in and all of these things. Like, I was in it, you guys. I was in it. My grandmother started going back to church, but still she was never this religious person. She was never this Bible thumping person. And so I remember her being worried about me. I wish I had my emails, you guys. I wish I could get into my Hotmail account. I've tried, trust me, I've tried. But I remember her like sending me emails saying, I'm so worried about you. I feel like you're losing who you are, and I'm just worried about you. And I would be like, oh, I rebuke you. I rebuke you. Like, I was in it, y'all. So anyway, at the time the guy was dating, my boyfriend, we had been dating since high school. I remember wanting him to be sold out for Jesus the way that I was sold out. And he was kind of like, you need to chill a little bit. And so I felt like, man, I want somebody that's like equally yoked. All the words, right? Equally yoked. And I remember praying and journaling, praying to Jesus to reveal my husband to me. Because while this was the guy that I thought I was going to marry after college, because he wasn't like sold out the way I was like, okay, God, is this the man that I'm supposed to be with? Is this the person I'm supposed to marry? And I'm telling this story because it is very transformational on my journey in why I left Christianity. I'm praying and praying and praying, reveal my husband to me, and Lord, make sure that you remove my sight and it be your sight, because y'all, I liked a certain kind of guy. Like, he had to look a certain way, and he had to be a certain way, and he had to be in like, I had this list. So I remember praying to God, make sure you reveal him to me and move me out the way and all of these things. And so my now husband, one day in my mind, popped up at my church. Now, what I know now is that that was his home church. And he had went away to the military, got out of the military, and then came back to his home church. But in my perspective, it appeared that this guy just one day showed up at my church. And I had saw him the previous year, I think it was. I think it was the previous year. I had saw him at my church. Look, at my church. And he was with his then fiance. And I was with my boyfriend. And I remember this so clearly because he was like singing, and it almost seemed like he knew the church. And I was like, who is this guy? And why is he like all over the place? And who is the girl he's with? She's super cute. Why is she with him? This is how I used to think, y'all. I'm like, why is she with him? Oh, he is not cute. And I remember them going to the altar, and who I now know are his parents. But his parents were people that I loved and adored. I didn't know them, but they were some of the people in the church that I admired, and I loved them, and I adored his mom. Sang in the choir, and she sang this song one time that was so beautiful. Me and my friend, we would go to church together, and on our way home, we would talk about them. We just admired the people in the church. Again, listen to those words, right? I remember they were praying for them. You know, you would go to the altar. I don't know, black churches, y'all know, right? You would go to the altar, and they were praying for them. And I'm like, who is this dude? Why are they praying for him? And what is going on? Who is this? You're in my church. And so that was a year before. So a year later, he shows up again, and my brain wasn't processing that was the same guy. This time, it was who is that? This guy, wait a minute. And I remember saying to my same friend, man, that's my husband. That is my husband. Because he was at Bible study. He was in the choir. He was on the step team. He was dealing with the youth ministry. And I was like, that's my husband. That's him right here, right there. And I started praying for this guy. Fast forward, long story short, we meet. He approaches me, asks me out for a date. We go out on a date, and I'm just getting to know him. I had known him for probably about a week or so. And here is where my journey with religion begins to transform and transition. So I had known him for about a week or so. And his mom, who I didn't know was his mom, comes up to me at church, after church, and she says to me, I don't like you. Now, I want you guys to remember, this was a woman that I had admired, right? I didn't know that was his mom, anything. And she was like, I don't like you. You've been dating my son, and you haven't introduced yourself to me. Now, anybody that knows me in my real life, knows that I didn't grow up in the South. I very much so grew up with parents and a family that taught me to speak up for myself. In fact, my dad was making me debate with him. My dad's an attorney. When I would go in the summers, we would have these battle out debates, and he would change my mind. And we would literally have these debates. And so that is how I was raised, to advocate and to argue for myself, and that respect is earned, it's not given. So it doesn't matter how much older you are or how much younger, respect is earned, not given. And so when she approached me, I don't like you, you've been talking to my son and haven't introduced yourself, I was like, well, your son did not introduce me to you, and it is not my responsibility to introduce myself to you. That's your son's responsibility. I'm not dating your son. You need to talk to him. Now, she is from the South and is older, and me and my mother-in-law have had this discussion and talked about this and have gotten to a place of closure and resolved and forgiveness. But I will never forget these things, and this is my journey. So we've talked about it, but she was very much so that person that you respect your elders. And so obviously that first introduction of me did not sit well with her. At the same time, y'all, I was like, wait, this is the woman that I was admiring, that I thought was the epitome of what a Christian was. Because keep in mind, I never really had those representations as a child. So when I see this older woman, and I'm like, man, this is what I'm aspiring to be, or whatever. Now I'm face to face with her, had never met her, and she's saying to me she doesn't like me. And I'm like, wait, but I thought you were a Christian. Like, what's happening? Anyway, that was my first, wait a minute, kind of moment in the church. So fast forward a little bit further, me and my husband are now dating, and I get pregnant. Oh, you guys. So I get pregnant, we're dating, we're not married. I stated he was very heavy in the church. And the pastor, who was going through this weird phase also, the church was changing. I remember the pastor had bodyguards and you couldn't talk to him after church. And it was like, why does he have bodyguards? So there was all this kind of weird transition happening at the same time. And so he calls my husband into the office and he tells him that he's going to have to step down from everything, including the choir, which anybody that knows my husband knows that that was his love, his passion, like his everything is singing. And the choir was his everything. And basically told him he had to step down. And my husband was like, because you can see my sin, because I know there's other people sinning, but because you can see my sin, I'm, essentially being punished. And it was like, yeah, pretty much. That's it. That's it. And I remember him being devastated. And that didn't directly affect me. I wasn't told to step down from anything, but indirectly affected me because I'm thinking, isn't the church supposed to be a place where everyone is welcomed and where you mentor and where you love on and you counsel and you guide and you direct, right? Remember, I had a baby when I was a teenager, and at that time, me and my mom were in church. And I remember just being loved on in that church and it being like, we all make mistakes. That's what makes us imperfect. And that's why Jesus died, is because we all make mistakes, right? So I came from that, and now I'm older. And remember, I'm at the same time in my life when I'm visiting my dad, we're having these deep religious discussions, right? So all of this is happening together. So now I'm pregnant, and at the same time, my mother-in-law is like, I didn't want my son to be with a ready-made family because I had a baby. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what is, again, this is a woman and a man that I had adored, right? And now it's like, well, now I'm being judged because I had a child? Okay. And in my mind, I'm like, now I'm reverting back, because y'all have to again understand that I was this person that was a firecracker. So now I'm reverting back and I'm thinking, first of all, your son is lucky to be with somebody like me who A, has a college degree, and B, like, I'm just like listing, right, all these things, because what? Anyway, so all of that is happening. He's asked to step down. I'm being attacked from this standpoint, and my grandmother dies. It was unexpected. It was so sudden, and I mean, she was my rock. And I remember at the same time, my grandmother this whole entire time had been like worried about me and just really being like, what is happening? Like, I'm concerned about you. And she knew I was pregnant. We had went home and I had told her, and she was so excited, but she was worried about me. She knew about my husband's family and how they were treating me and how he was, because at that time he didn't have 2 feet to stand on, like he was still being breastfed essentially. And she came from a marriage like that, right? You got to think, she came from a husband that was Jehovah's Witness, that was doing these religious things or had this religious kind of family, but he was abusive. They didn't like her. He was cheating on her, and they knew it, and they supported it, and they talked bad about her. So for her, it was like, oh my God, like, you are similarly walking down the same exact road that I walked down, and now you're pregnant and I'm worried. She passes away, and y'all, I won't even get into my whole birth story with Jaden, but it was a disaster. And so now I lose the most significant person, one of the most significant people in my life, and I am left surrounded by people who are calling themselves Christians but are treating me so bad. And then not only that, I lose my grandmother, and my mom regressed, right? She battled with drug addiction. And so now here's a person where I have been going home and I'm praying and I'm laying hands and I'm doing all the things that the church is telling me to do, and yet I'm seeing no resolve in that. I'm dealing with this, and the church was totally unsupportive of everything that I was going on in my life. And I crashed, y'all. And I remember going to see my dad, and we were talking about it, and my dad was like, you have been battling with me, but the reason you haven't changed my mind is because you don't have anything to back yourself up with. You've never read the Quran. You've never read the Torah. So you can't change my mind because you don't know, you don't have the knowledge. And I remember that hitting me like a ton of bricks. And I remember thinking about that. Man, my dad is right. I'm like following this faith and this religion blindly because that's what was placed in my lap. And I don't know if it's the truth. I don't know. I don't feel good right now, and I'm not sure if this is really the truth. My grandmother dying just opened up Pandora's box of, what do I believe? Why am I doing these things? What is going on for me? And I then started to read the Quran. It blew my mind, you guys. It blew my mind how much the Bible and the Quran were alike, how similar they were, how much the books were saying the same thing but in a different way. And I was like, wow. I really went down that rabbit hole of trying to learn and understand that particular religion. And it was fascinating to me, and I learned so much. So going down that road made me start to think, okay, maybe Christianity isn't the be-all, end-all. And it made me want to explore even more things. I will say, when I went down that road of reading the Quran and comparing it to the Bible, my relationship with God got stronger. So I kept saying earlier, remember these keywords. What I learned in that moment was that what I had a love for was the church. What I had a love for was the pastor. What I had a love for was the people. I didn't even really know God. I didn't know what a relationship with God was. Like, I didn't know. I wasn't being taught that. And honestly, I don't even think that that's something you can be taught. I don't think you can learn that in church. I don't even think you can learn that from reading the Bible. That is something, to me, a process you have to go through, a transformation that you have to go through. And my grandmother dying put me into this cocoon, similar to the caterpillar, of a transformation. And my relationship with God got stronger. It was almost like my relationship split apart. Everything I knew blew up. I was so angry. I was so mad at God. Like, how could you take the one person, because again, my mom was in her battle. So the one person that I had, how could you take her from me and leave me with these people who at the time I was like are horrible? These are horrible people, because I was leaving. I wasn't even gonna stay with my now husband. My daughter was born February 7th, 2003. My grandmother died February 10th, 2003, and I graduated from college May of 2003. So my mind, I was leaving. When I graduated from college, I was done. I was going home. I was leaving. Like, I'm out of this joint. And so to rip that security from me, I was so mad at God. And I was like, there is no way there's a God. Like, none, zero, zip. I'm done. I'm an atheist. And so I think my dad, all those years with my dad and us talking and him saying to me in a pivotal moment, you don't even know, you don't have a backbone to stand on, almost saved me from going down that road, because it gave me something else to look into. And in that something else, my relationship with God was healed. And so for a while I went down that road, and then later I discovered Noahide, which is basically a sector of Judaism. Jewish people believe they were given 400 commandments, whereas the descendants of Noah were given the 10 commandments. And so they feel like they have to abide by these 400 laws, whereas everybody else just needs to follow the 10 commandments. And that was fascinating. And so I started studying with a rabbi. And studying with that rabbi, I studied with him for a year. It was great. I was like, I'm converting. I'm going to be Jewish. I'm converting. And I remember when I was studying with him, I was saying to him that I want to convert, like I want to be Jewish. And he was like, why? Why would you want to be Jewish? And he told me then that in the Jewish community, you're going to get rejected. When you go to convert, they reject you like X amount of times. And he's like, you don't have to follow these laws. We have to follow these laws. God was kind and gracious to you that you only have to follow 10 commandments. So why would you want to do this? And I was like, this is so fascinating. And I remember for me, it made me think back about my journey with being Christian and how we never talked about these things in church. That stuff was never talked about. It made me think how I was receiving so much knowledge and kindness from this rabbi, and how it felt like he was genuinely concerned or genuinely cared about my afterlife or even my life today, that he would say to me, why would you want to try to convert to something that is going to be difficult and that's going to be hard when God does not want you to do that? And that for me was an aha moment, because I started thinking, when you think about it, the only religion that's out here actively seeking people is Christians. You don't see Muslims trying to convert you. Jewish people definitely are not trying to convert you. That is the only religion that is actively like, accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior or go to hell. The other religions aren't doing that. And I was like, wait a minute. And then on top of that, what happened for me was these other religions are so disciplined and so strict. In Christianity, they almost denounce the Old Testament. It's like, oh, that was the Old Testament. We only revert back to the Old Testament when it's convenient. And this is not an attack. Let me just stop right here and say, this is not an attack on anybody that is a Christian. But these are my experiences and my feelings and my views. It what I saw. So this is not an attack on any Christian. But it was almost like the Old Testament is only convenient when it's exiling somebody, when it's proven on why we can't accept this, or when this is why we judge you. That's the only time it's brought up. Otherwise, it's the New Testament, right? What I realized is that Christianity is the most laxed religion when it comes to having any type of discipline, but the most judgmental and the most try to recruit everybody in the world. If you talk to any Jewish person, they do not feel like you are going to go to hell because of this belief. You know what I mean? Do they believe that worshiping Jesus is not right? Yeah, because they believe there's one God. Which is my segue into my next thoughts. So I did that. Then, y'all, I just did a lot. So after that, I went to the Baha'i faith. They follow Baha'u'llah, but it's the Baha'i faith. You can Google it. I attended a service there. And again, I was fascinated by how similar their thoughts were to all of these other thoughts, right? Then I started thinking, okay, Jesus was in this sector of the world, and there were no cars, there were no planes, there were no, I don't know, hot air balloons. There was no way for you to spread information quickly. There was no social media, no text messaging, no nothing. So Jesus was in this one sector of the world. But God is huge, massive. Like I say, the universe. So you will often hear me talk about the universe, and the universe this and the universe that. And what I'm referring to is God, which is an energy. We cannot see it, but we can feel it. It is not a person. It does not have a gender. It does not have a race. It is literally an energy force that is within us that we can feel. And so when I think about that, and when I started to meditate, because that was my next phase, I started to meditate. And when I started to do that, I was like, God is massive. If we look at all of these beautiful teachers, Allah, Baha'u'llah, Jesus, Buddha, like all of these amazing teachers, they all have the same message. They all had the same purpose. They all had the same goal. Their goal, their purpose, their message was love and kindness. And so when I started to think about that, I was like, maybe God sent all these different teachers to all different sectors of the world, and he spoke in ways that this part of the region and the world will understand. I'm gonna just let that sit with you for a second. How can an all-knowing being, if you want to put it as a being, but how can an energy box itself? How can something so powerful say, I'm gonna box myself, and the only way you can get to me is through Jesus? But there's a strong possibility that those people will never know about Jesus. Sorry, you're just going to hell because you just don't know about Jesus. Or even if you do somehow find out about Jesus, because Jesus does not speak to your soul, your spirit, and you refuse to accept that, you're going to hell. Should have listened. How could somebody as loving, you know what I mean? I'm a parent now, and of 12 kids, and my 12 kids are all different. They are all uniquely and divinely and beautifully and wonderfully made. And I have to speak to each of them differently. I cannot parent them all the same. I cannot teach them all the same. They're all different. They came out of my body, came out of my heart, my spirit, but they're different. How can I now parent them all the same? I can't. When this energy force, this person, this being, if we're going to give it a being, think the same, I can't teach everybody the same. I want them all to get the same message. I want all of my kids to grow up and be productive, kind, wonderful citizens, but I can't convey that message to them all the same. I may have to do it this way with this child or this way with this child, but whatever way, I want them to get the same message. So why couldn't God do the same? That moment for me, it resonated so much in my body. The energy I felt, even now as I'm talking about it, I'm just getting chills. Like, it still resonates so much for me. God is just an energy that is too massive for us to box. And that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good to know that this energy is bigger than I could ever understand. I lost my mom unexpectedly, wasn't to drugs. She was doing fantastic. Our relationship was so wonderful. It was what I had been praying for so long. And at that time, she was my everything, my kids' everything. Like, they loved their grandmother. And we lost her unexpectedly. I remember once again feeling that rage and just feeling so angry and having this new feeling and understanding of what God was helped me to calm that rage and that anger. I think if I would have still been trying to be a Christian, or if I was still on that path, y'all, I wouldn't have survived. I would have not survived. I just wouldn't have. But being able to feel God's energy, to be able to feel the universe comfort me and understand you some things you just won't understand. You cannot put me in a box. You cannot box this energy. This energy is so much bigger than you. And all you can do is follow the teachers that I have sent, to listen to their message and try your best to walk that life today. That's all you can do. And what that message is to be kind, to love, to treat people the way you want to be treated, which is the golden rule. Because if you do that, you're following all the 10 commandments. You don't want anybody to steal from you. You don't want anybody to cheat on you. You don't want anybody to kill you or your loved ones. You don't want anybody to be greedy and take all the things from you, and so forth and so on. So if you just do that, if you just treat people genuinely how you want to be treated, and you love people no matter how different they are, and you're just kind, then you're doing what you're supposed to do. And everything else is out of your control. Everything else is not for you to understand. Everything else is not for you to figure out, because you just don't know. And I think that's why I love and I am resonating so much with the story of the caterpillar, because the caterpillar had no idea it was going to be a butterfly. It had no idea. And the caterpillar, it just did what it was supposed to do, which was eat. It didn't focus on all these other things. It literally did what the universe told it to do, which was just eat. Just eat, caterpillar. If you just do that one thing, I promise you that something beautiful is going to be on the other side of that one thing. And I imagine that when that caterpillar was in the cocoon dying, it felt at peace because it did everything that the universe told it to do, and it didn't have any worries or concerns about what was next, because it rested easy knowing I did exactly what you told me to do, which was eat. And that makes me feel good, y'all. It makes me feel good. And I can honestly say that when I was walking the path of Christianity, I didn't feel good. I did not feel good, I would say 80% of the time. I always felt on edge. I always felt, am I doing something wrong? I always felt judged. I always felt like I'm not ever going to be good enough. I always felt like I needed to read more, or I needed to do more, or I needed to save more lives. And I always felt like I would never have that relationship with God. There was always this middle part that was like separating me from God, which was Jesus, if I'm just being honest. I always felt like I was never going to get to the person that I really wanted to have the connection with. It's almost like parenting. If you have a nanny and the child wants a connection with the parent, but the only way to get to the parent is to go through the nanny. It's like, no, I want my mom. I want my mom. I want my dad. I want that person. And I always felt that way. I never felt just this sense of like peace. in my being a Christian. And I felt so judgmental. Like, the teachings and the people that was surrounding me were so judgmental that I couldn't just be. My son is gay, y'all. In my mind, like, I remember when he was younger, I knew he was gay. That the moment the baby was like 8 months, I was like, I think my child might be gay. And I remember saying, hey, if he be like, I'm gay or I want to be a girl, I'm gonna call him Deja and we're gonna move on with our lives. So I remember clearly saying that. But when I got into the church, I felt like I couldn't do that. I remember trying to beat the gay out of my child. You will not be this. Trying to pray the gay out of him and trying to get him to be something else. And that wasn't me. And my grandmother saw it, y'all. She saw it. And that wasn't who I was. And I was trying so hard because I felt so judged. And I felt like, we're not going to get into the kingdom of heaven. We're not going to get to God. And just feeling like less than. When I think back, I was never really at peace or happy being a Christian. I just wasn't. Where I sit today, being non-religious, which for me means non-judgmental, which for me means loving and kind and accepting. For me, being non-religious means listening. It means learning. It means being open and receptive to everything. It means allowing the universe to just embody in me. What is it that you want me to know, God? What should I know? It means being able to flow, like being like a river and just flow. It means not being constricted and confined to one thing. It means understanding that God is too big for my little tiny brain to understand. It means that God will speak to people in ways that they will understand. It means that God is trying to get a message out. And however God has to get that message out is how they're going to get it out. It doesn't matter if it needs to come through Jesus, through Allah, through Buddha, through whoever. The message will get out. The message will be heard because I have an ultimate purpose. That's it. So the same with my kids. No matter if I got to put you in timeout or if I got to take away your phone or if I have to spank your little bottom or, well, I don't spank anymore because I've been changed. But if I got to tap your little bottom or if I just need to say I'm disappointed to you, whatever it is that I have to do to get the message across is what I have to do for each child, because ultimately the message is to be kind and be gentle or whatever the case may be. So what is my child's love language? Okay, well then that's how I have to do it. What is this child's love language? Okay, well that's how I have to do it. It's way bigger than the only way you're going to get this message is this way. It's just bigger than that. So this is a very, very, very long video, y'all. I hope you guys are still here. And yeah, I hope that this is all making sense. It's my long journey of why I ultimately left Christianity and where I sit today as a non-religious person. And when I did my little reflection the other day and was like, how do you feel today in 2022? How do you feel? I feel the same. I feel that God is too big. God is too big. I sit today and I think that I am currently in the cocoon of transformation again, because what God's trying to reveal to me is you got it, now you need to accept it. Because for a long time, this is where I've sat, but I've never wanted to talk about it. I've always shied away from the conversation or the question of, are you Christian? Living in the South, 2 questions you're asked when you first meet somebody is, what does your husband do? And what church do you go to? And I've always shied away from that question of what church do I go to. I've always shied away from telling people I'm not Christian or I'm non-religious or whatever. Like, I've always shied away from that because I felt unsettled in it a little bit. And I think the transformation I'm in right now is God being like, accept it. Accept it. This is where you are, and this is the reality, and this is your truth. And it feels so good. Like, it does. It feels good when I sit in my truth of the universe is too big. It's too big. And that just opens up. It's just, what that does for me, y'all, when I say the universe is too big, is it's space. It's space to breathe. Like, I have space to breathe. And I have space to be like, it's big enough for you. It's big enough for you too. We're different, or you think this way, but it's big enough. We all can fit. It's enough room. It's space. The universe is so big. Let's just all come in. And let's sit down and let's talk and let's have kindness and whatever. So I'm not judging you. There's enough space for both of us at the table. Let's talk about it. That's what it does for me. It just frees up space, and it makes me accepting and loving and kind and all the things. And I'm happy with that. No, I'm still not Christian. I have no desire to be a Christian. If that is my only way into heaven, then I better live my best life now. I better feel really good now, because according to Christians, I'm not going to feel so good in the afterlife. So I better live my best life now, because I have no desire. I have no desire to be that. I have no desire to be any religion. I love Jewish people. I love the religion. I have such a nostalgia for that religion. My time with the rabbi was so meaningful for me that I just have a nostalgia and a love for it. But I have no desire to be that either. I have no desire to be Muslim. There's so much in that religion that I take away as well. I dabbled into Hinduism. I've never been to a Hindu church. I really wanted to go, but I still haven't. I do have a strong love for that religion as well. When my mom died, I went into that road. I studied that religion a lot, and it's amazing to me, y'all. I'm diverting for a second, but going back to the universe being so big, I feel like the universe gives me exactly what I need at that moment. And Hinduism was given to me when my mom died. I cremated my mom, and I struggled with that for such a long time, cremating her, like when I was going to do it and how and should I and all of that. And that's when Hinduism was placed on my heart, and I started researching it, and they talked about how they cremate. And the reason they cremate is because they feel like ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and you need to get back to your dust form as quickly as possible to release your soul. And I remember being like, oh my God, that feels so good. And so cremating her felt so good, and I feel like we cremated her and her soul was freed and immediately came back in Phoenix. Which is why his name is Phoenix. Ashes, he rose from the ashes. Literally, I in my heart of hearts believe that. He looks just like my mother. Sometimes he acts just like my mother. Like, he is a spitting image of her. She passed in September of 2014, and Phoenix was born in March of 2015. And so I truly, truly feel like cremating her instantly released her spirit, and she instantly was born in Phoenix. That's just, whatever. I believe it. And Hindu was given to me at that time. I'm going to roll with it. Yeah, I definitely feel like God gives me what I need when I need it. That's my long drawn out journey of why I left Christianity. I guess in the nutshell, the reason I left is because I was in love with people and not God. I would say that's the number one reason I left. People disappointed me, which ultimately pushed me out of the religion and opened the door for me to study other religions. So I left because I was in love with the wrong thing. And B, there was no space for me to be me. There was no space. And 3, I want a relationship directly with God. I don't want a middle person. I want a relationship directly with God. And so there's the 3 reasons I left Christianity. Should have said that at the beginning of the video. Then you could have been like, oh, okay, done, watch it. Okay, y'all. That is all I have. It is time for me to move on to something else in work life. If you're still here, you are definitely the real MVP because you just sat through a very, very long video. So if you're not an official MVP, then you definitely need to hit the subscribe button so you can get your trophy. And join the MVPs. To the rest of my family, you guys already know I love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging in there with me. Leave whatever thoughts, comments you may have down below. If there's any other topic or chat that you want to discuss, let me know because I got lots of time on my hands this week so I can record all the videos. So if there's anything you guys want to chat about, let me know in the videos or in the comments down below. And again, I love you guys, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.